Okay, Rabotai, we are on page 17A, 1, A3, where are we? A1.
Second or third line.
Okay. So I don't know where this starts.
We stopped in the middle, we just wanted to get over the line.
Talk about Ishmael and Yaakov.
Oh, there's no 17A1 in this book.
What is it?
A4.
Sketching.
No, doesn't make sense. Oh, because it starts with chapter 2, that's right. Okay. So we are on 17A1. Now the Gemara basically is going to go through a list of all of the things, all of the years of Yaakov Avinu, and we're going to show how the Gemara comes to these, disclaimers, or comes to these points that it lays down. It says very basically, this is how old Yaakov was at this point. So how do we get to these statements that the Gemara just throws down like that? So let's start. Go back to 16b4. Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta. Rabba said the name Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta. Gadol Talmud Torah yoter mikibur avayim. Greatest Talmud Torah, even more than honoring one's father and mother. All of those years, Yaakov Avinu was in Beit Ever. He was not punished for not being there with his parents. Because our rabbi told, why were the years of Yishmael counted? What does it mean? The Pasuk says, and Yishmael lived 100 years and 30 years and 7 years. What was the reason why we listed the years of Yishmael? Normally that's something that we do only for a Sadiq. And even though we say Yishmael did Teshuvah at the end of his life, we only normally do this for a person who was a tzaddik throughout their life. The Gemara says, in order to calculate through using that method of having an anchor in the years of Yishmael's life, we were able to decide and understand the breakdown of the years of Yaakov. Because it says, Yishmael's life was 137 years. Why did we need that end point? How much older was Yishmael from Yitzchak? Because we have a pasuk. The pasuk says, Abraham is 86, Yishmael, so he's 86. How old is he when he gives birth to Yitzchak? He's 100 years old when he gives birth to Yitzchak. That means that how old is Yishmael? If he was 86 when Yishmael was born, he was 100 when Yitzchak was born. 14 years. So we know he's 14 years. If that's the case, so Yishmael is older than Yitzchak by 14 years. That Yitzchak Avinu, after marrying Rivka, struggled to have children. How old was he when he finally gave birth to Yaakov and Esav? He was 60 years old. And if he's 60, how old is Yishmael at that point? Yaakov, and Yaakov was born. He's 74. How much is left over from his life from 74 years until 137? Gemara answers, Shitin Utlat. So 137 minus 74 leaves you Shitin Utlat, 63. So if Yishmael, if at that point that Yishmael died, we know exactly how old Yaakov Avinu was, because we know his birth point, we know Yishmael's death point, we know Yishmael's birth point, and we know Yitzchak Avinu's birth point, we know Yitzchak Avinu's point of age when he gives birth to Yaakov and Esav. So all of those things together combine to give us this idea that Yaakov is 63 years old when Yishmael dies. Now, we have a Braita that says exactly this point. Now let's take a look at this. Says the Gemara, Tanya, in the time when Yaakov Avinu got the beracha, how old was he? He was 63 years old. That means that the time of the beracha is the time of Yishmael's death, because we just made a cheshbon that it was also at 63, right? That time exactly, Yishmael died. And Esav saw that Yitzchak gave a beracha to Yaakov. So what did he go do in the aftermath of that story? He went. Esav married. He went to Yishmael and he married Machalat, the daughter of Yishmael, Achot Nevayot. She was a sister of Nevayot. The Gemara says, the Braita explains, hold on. I already know this. Misha Nishma, once you tell me, Mimashma, Shinemar Bat Yishmael, once you tell me that she's Bat Yishmael, Eni Yodea Sheyachot Nevayot, do I not know that she's automatically the sister of Nevayot? Why do I know that? Because already previously we'd been told that the son of Ishmael is Nevayot. So now you tell me that Machalat is the daughter of Ishmael. What does that make Machalat and Nevayot? Brother and sister. Hazaku Baruch. So I don't need you to tell me that she's the daughter of Ishmael, the sister of Nevayot. Rather, why does it tell us that? Melamed, Shekidsha Ishmael, Umet. Ishmael was there when Esav came to propose. Ishmael was there. Ishmael gave his daughter's hand in marriage to Esav. However, by the time it came round to the wedding, but who was the one who married her off, walked her down the aisle, Yani? That was Nevayot. Why? Because at that point already, Ishmael had passed away. Okay? Gemara says, okay, let's go back. So Shishtin Utlat. So 63 years old at the time when Ishmael dies, and also at the time when he gets the Beracha from his father. Yosef. 14 years until Yosef is born. Okay? Ha Shivein Vishiva. That gives you how much? 77. Uchtiv Yosef ben Shiloshim Shana be'omdo lefnei Paro. And Yosef is 30 years old when he stands in front of Paro. 1 second. What does that give us? Ha me'ah usheva. That means that Yaakov at this point is 107. Why? How do we get to 107 from 63? Right? He's 63 when he goes to Lavan. 14 years he waits for Yosef. Okay? 1 second. Let's just make sure we understand. How many years does he work for Rachel? You guys remember? 14 years. And we know Rachel couldn't have children. So how can it be that Yosef was born after 14 years?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. Except that everyone makes this mistake. The Pasuk itself tells it. He worked 14 years for Rachel, but he didn't wait 14 years for Rachel. Because he first made a deal with him. How long is he going to work for her for? 7 years. The guy pulls the old switcheroo. He gives him, Leah. Yaakov says, what'd you do? You promised me Rachel. What's Lavan's answer?
Got to work another 7 years.
No, work another 7 years for her. Maleh shavua azot, finish Sheva Berachot, then I'll give you Rachel, and then you work for me 7 years, post facto.
No.
It's a pasuk in the Torah. Everyone forgets that. So what does that mean? So how long did she wait for Yosef?
7 years.
7 years. While
years
her sister's pumping out babies, right? 6 babies she has. Sorry.
Was that Lavan's way of saying I didn't lie? You waited 7 years?
Lavan was always trying to white lie his way through life. Scam his way, get more, but still be uncatchable. Right? Esav didn't like you. What did he do? He stabbed you in the face. Right? He didn't need any legal mechanisms. He didn't need to play any games. Lavan is the guy who still kind of half abides by his word. And that's why his name is Lavan. Because he's always pretending like he's clean.
White hat.
Yeah. Whoa. I didn't say that on the video? You did. All right. Let's carry on. So 63 plus 14. Right? So 63, 14 is 77. From 77, how long is Yosef? How old is Yosef when he stands in front of Paro? 30. So 77 plus 30 years gets us to 107 years old. So when Yaakov stands in front of Paro, if they're coming down to Egypt, okay, how old is he? How old is Yaakov, when Yosef first stands in front of Paro? Because it says Yosef ben Shiloshim Shana. Not when Yaakov stood in front of Paro. When Yosef stood in front of Paro. Okay, that happens earlier. Because Yosef has the whole sketch with the boys, with the brothers, with the thing, with the that. Okay, so he's 107. Says the Gemara, okay, if that's the case, Shav di Shav'ah v'tarteh de kafna. What do we add to that? You have 7 years of plenty represented by the fat cows and the fat stalks of wheat. V'tarteh de kafna. And 2 years of famine. Wasn't there supposed to be 7 years of famine? There was. But as soon as Yaakov Avinu came down to Egypt, the Sadiq came, the Kilala, the whole famine just got wiped out.
In all of Egypt?
In all of Egypt. That's what made them so powerful. They needed the 7 years to cover the 7 years.
Yeah.
But once they only did 2 years out of a 7-year sentence, how many extra years of produce did they have to sell to neighboring countries?
5.
They were 5 years ahead of the game. Okay? That brought tremendous power, influence, and wealth to Egypt.
And Paro doesn't think at that point. He told me 7-7. It's 7-2. Now we're great.
No, because he saw that the Be'acha came because of Yaakov. Gemara says that they would see that when Yaakov would walk down to the river, the water would come to his feet.
It wasn't the same Paro.
Well, at that point, it's the same Paro. At that point.
No, I'm saying Moshe. Moshe's Paro was a different guy.
Yeah, I think, no, he's talking about the current state Paro. He's saying, how come Paro didn't say, 1 second, you sketched me on the dream, because you said 7-7, now it was 7-2. And the answer is, true, but there was something material that had changed, and that was the fact that Yaakov came, and Paro could see that was because Yaakov came. Okay? Says the Gemara, so 7 plus 2, add to 107. So 107 and 9 is 116. Uchtiv, the Pasuk says, Yom Paro Yaakov kam yemei shnei chayecha. How many years is your life? Yom Yaakov el Paro yemei shnei migurai 30 u'me'at shana. I'm 130 years. So 1 second, me'at v'shitzar havyan. It should have been 116. So 14 years are missing from Yaakov Avinu's lifespan. Elashma Amina, we learn from here. 14 shnin dahave bet ever lo chashiv lahu. We did not count a span of time spanning 14 years where Yaakov Avinu hit pause on his life and went to the yeshiva of Ever. When does that happen? That's on his way to Lavan. So if you remember, we said 63 plus 14 years for Yosef makes him 77, right? So we count 63 to 77. Meanwhile, there's another 14 years in there. It's really 63 to 77 is just the years where he's learning Torah at Bet Ever.
Why do they keep saying Bet Ever, not Shem Bet Ever?
Because at this point, Shem had already passed away. So it was now exclusively Eved's yeshiva.
So you could take the name off the yeshiva if a guy dies.
So I don't know, this is maybe a proof that the donors that have their name on the building, I'm sketching.
It's a big item, by the way.
This is very different. Here, the only person teaching Torah there was now Ever. So they don't want false advertising. You come for Rabbi Rabbi Yedid's class, and then they have the substitute rabbi there. Then you feel like you got swindled. I mean, not that the substitute rabbi for Rabbi Yedid is not as good as Rabbi Yedid. I don't even know who the substitute rabbi is. I don't want to say Lashon. I don't speak negatively about anybody. But if you came for one rabbi's class and then it's another rabbi, you're upset, right? So
If it's you, yeah.
sorry, if I'm the substitute.
No, if you're the rabbi and we have a substitute for you,
I know. I was that.
I'm not into that.
Okay, I love
So
you.
you did that to me one Shabbat in the city. I wasn't staying in the city, but for you.
Megilla, sorry, I apologize. Okay, I put my own foot in my own mouth. Okay. I remember once I had a friend. There was this person who was at the table, and they just kept making these. They kept stepping in it, saying one, dumb thing after the next.
Yeah.
Finally, the host turns to this person and goes, I realize the only time you take your foot out of your mouth is to switch feet. Okay, let's carry on. So therefore, the 14 years that are missing are the 14 years in Yeshivat Bet Ever. Says the Gemara, Ela Shma Mina. Okay? Lo Chashiv Lahu was not counted in this calculation. Now, why is that relevant, first of all, to us? This 14-year element. Why is it relevant to us? Because later on we'll find that for all the years that Yaakov Avinu was not there to honor his father, Yosef was not there to honor his father. It was midah keneged midah. And how many years was that? 22 years. So the question is, if there's 14 more years in that cheshbon that he's not home, how many years should Yosef have really been missing? 36 years.
But then they say the
Why is he not
14
punished? The answer is because Torah supersedes kibud vayim. Says the Gemara.
Brother, that's crazy. We had one word on 16b, whatever, and then you go through this whole timeline, back and forth, and then you're like, okay, that's why we're here, actually.
On which word?
Remember, No, I'm saying that the kibud abayim is.
Oh, you mean one line, one line.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know what I always loved about this? I have to say this. It's a little bit, taxing on the brain to go through. He was there. He was 14. He was 63. He was there. We had this also previously in the Gemara. You remember? We were running through the numbers and people were like losing their minds, right? But I think it's so important, and this is really because a lot of times you think like, the Gemara says if you do this, then it's like honey, and you're like, okay, whatever. But when you see the didactic nature of how every statement is backed, the Gemara could go for a page and a half, just to show you what the logic. Remember when you were a kid in school, you'd sit there and the teacher would say after you write the answer to the question, show your work. This is the Gemara showing the work.
I think it's historically significant and it gives credibility.
And not only does it give credibility to what you're seeing, you recognize that this process is behind every statement.
Yeah.
Okay, that was really what was going on in the Beit Midrash. That's the Gemara. Titania, we have a Braita that says, Haya Yaakov bet Ever Mutman 14 shana. Yaakov is hiding in this yeshiva for 14 years. Ever met lahar she'arad Yaakov Avinu la'aram na'araim 2 shanim. Ever passes away 2 years after Yaakov Avinu goes to Aram Na'araim. That means he studies for 14 years by his rabbi Ever. And then what happens? When does Ever pass away? 2 years after he leaves to Lavan. Yetza misham ubalo la'aram na'araim. He left and he went to Aram Na'araim. Nimtza kishamad ala be'er ben 77 shana. Remember we said 63 and 1477. So when he stands at the be'er and he meets Rachel for the first time, how old is he? He's a spring chicken, a young, dashing 77 years old. Okay? Now, so we see from there that it must be that he was there for 14 years by the yeshiva. If the Braita tells us exactly how old he was, that he was 14 years there, 77 years old when he arrived. Now, what does the Gemara mean when it says mutman? That he was hidden. What does it mean he was hidden in the yeshiva?
Well, did he run away from his brother?
Excellent. So the whole point was to get away from Esav. Mm-hmm. Right? So he stops in this place on the way. Now, it's interesting. Did Yitzchak and Rivka not know about the fact that there was other hiding places other than Aram Naharaim?
Did they not know?
Like they also knew that there was a thing called yeshiva. So if they wanted him to go to yeshiva, why didn't they tell him, listen, your brother's hothead, he's going to kill you. They tell him, go over there, go to my brother, go get married. Right? Why didn't they tell him instead, go to yeshiva for 14 years? And if they didn't tell him that, why did Yaakov do what his parents did not tell him to do?
Good question.
So I have an approach. I have an approach in my brain. I'm not sure if it's emet though. But I want to say that perhaps there was a machloket, there was a disagreement between Yaakov and his parents about what his next step was. Yitzchak and Rivka were both of the opinion that you have the be'achot, you got to a certain stage, now it's time to be married. Yaakov felt that his personal trajectory of growth was not yet done. So therefore he felt that he could not move on to that next stage until he went to yeshiva. Now it's true, he was hiding in yeshiva too. But the parents felt that Yaakov Avinu was ready, and Yaakov Avinu felt about himself that he was not ready. And I often wondered to myself, what was the machloket? What made Yaakov think what he thought? And what made us, because obviously the lesson here is a very important lesson for parents to be able to learn. You think your kid's ready, the kid thinks they're not ready. Do you push them to take your view? Do you let them just kind of wait it out for themselves? Maybe they'll wait. Maybe they're waiting too long for no reason. But remember, think about this. Yitzchak Avinu, how old is he when he has the boys? What did we say just now?
60?
63. 60, excuse me. He's 60, right? He's 60 years old. 63 is Yaakov. Okay. 60 years old, right? If he's 6, because we said that Ishmael was 74, right? So Yitzhak is 60 years old. How many years does he wait until he has children?
60.
No, I'm saying how many years does he wait from after he gets married? He can't have children. It says, he's waiting. That means he's married already for a long time. when he has the kids at 60. Right? How old is he when they go get Rachel? When they go get Rivka? He's 37. That's the end of the Akedah. So he gets married relatively much younger than Yaakov Avinu. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure he's sitting there thinking to himself, what's going on here? Now, even Avraham Avinu would have wanted to marry off Yitzchak earlier. And that's what it says. After the story of the Akedah, Abraham says, let me find the wife of my son. He said to himself, what would have happened if he would have been brought on the Akedah and he wouldn't have had any kids? What if God would have wanted me to go through with it? And God's plan that I was supposed to have children through Yitzchak was because Yitzchak was supposed to have kids already from before. Now, I didn't push him to get married, so he didn't have the kids. So the Akedah wipes out my line. So immediately following the Akedah, what's Abraham's response? Got to get him married. So Yitzchak Avinu gets married at 37. How old is Yaakov at this point? 63. So they tell him, go get married. Yaakov doesn't feel like he's ready. Question is, why does Yaakov not feel like he's ready?
I have another theory.
Okay.
A couple of theories. Did Yitzchak really want him to go to Lavan's house? Didn't Yitzchak know Lavan was a creep?
Yitzchak did know that. But you remember, so Abraham also knew that. And Abraham sent them. Why? The Brisker Rav answers this. He says that the people that lived around them, they had what was called bed midot. The people in Abraham's family had bed deot. That's what he says.
Bed deot.
Deot means thoughts, approaches to life, ideologies. You can change a person's ideology, but to change a person's character traits is much harder. Because it's their
ingrained.
They're both ingrained, but one is ingrained as an idea. You can change the idea. One is ingrained as like muscle memory. It's like without even thinking, that's how the person reacts. So Yaakov said, Abraham said, "Don't take for me a child from here. Don't get away. Go back to my home. Go back to my city." What did they do to Abraham in his city? They threw him in a pit of fire.
Right.
That's who you want to be conspirators with? So some people say, better the devil you know.
Maybe,
but the Brisker Rav gives that answer.
Were too young, and he knew he had Ruach HaKodesh, and he said, I got to go learn for 14 years, they're too young.
Maybe, but then why did Yitzchak and Rivka not have that Ruach HaKodesh? You got to answer both pieces.
She was 4, right?
No, why did his parents not?
Oh. Good point.
Right? So we got this question here, what's going on? I have a theory. My theory is that Yaakov Avinu, Yitzchak and Rivka were perfectly comfortable with what went down with the Berachot. My theory is that Yaakov was not comfortable with what happened during the Berachot. Why? Because for them, well, don't worry, we'll wait for you, the host. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nהיה baro.
Sorry.
No problem. Give me a chance to grab a piece of cheese.
Yeah. Vada.
Why was Yaakov not okay with it? And they were. Yitzchak and Rivka, each one for their own midah, understood that given the circumstances, Yaakov had to do what he needed to do in order to get the berachot that actually already belonged to him. They understood. But what was Yaakov's midah? Titen emet liYaakov. Yaakov's midah is emet.
So everything that happened.
Yaakov could not bear what had happened.
So he had a guilty conscience.
Not so much a guilty conscience in terms of I did wrong, because his poskim, his rabbi and his rebbetzin, his parents, that's what they told him to do. But Yaakov felt, if I'm now heading off into the world on my own, and this is my midah is emet, I feel like I'm lacking in my midah, in my emet. So he goes and he spends the years in yeshiva to kind of refine himself before he goes. And why specifically? Because who are they sending him to?
Shem.
The biggest liar in the world. No.
Oh, Lavan.
Lavan.
Oh, he has to prepare himself for that.
Yaakov says, look what just happened with me. Not like I let my guard down, but I let my guard down. I'm not who I'm supposed to be. So it's okay in my parents' house when they're guiding me, when they told me exactly this is mutar to say. But the biggest problem a lot of times is people hear, Rabbi told me this, then they're like, oh, if the rabbi said it over there, then the same thing over here, I'm allowed to do that over there, I'm allowed to do. Meanwhile, no, there's a special reason why. Yaakov was, in many ways, I feel terrified. He's going to go to the house of Lavan, and he's going to become somebody who he can't look at in the mirror. And that's why I love, what's the first thing he says when he sees his brother, Esav? Im Lavan Garti. I lived with Lavan, says the Gemara, Garti, Lashon, Taryag, same letters. V'Taryag Misor Shamarti. There was, that was what was on his mind.
Yesh Omrim,
Yeah.
that he spent 14 years at the yeshiva because he's 14 years with Lavan. Any truth to that?
What do you mean he spends 14 years?
He needed 1 year for every year that he spent with Lavan to counteract.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. It would illustrate that you needed that much emet, right? In order to be able. I like it. No, I got the Yesh Omrim with the. I like the Yesh Omrim, right? But it makes a lot of sense. It means that he needed as much. By the way, just as a connection to your Yesh Omrim, the Gemara tells us that when David HaMelech would go to war, so they would have a soldier go to war, but every single soldier on the battlefield had another person behind him who sat and learned Torah on his behalf. That means that if the army had 10,000 soldiers, it had 10,000 people studying Torah, doing mitzvot, to be a merit for the 10,000 soldiers. So you're seeing, again, that same idea of each year in the house of a trickster, of a shyster like Lavan, being backed up by 1 year in the Bet Midrash. Okay, let's move on. Says the Gemara, how do we know that he wasn't punished for not spending that time with his father? The Braita says that they separated them for 22 years. Just like Yaakov Avinu stayed away from his father. But Yaakov actually was away from his father for 36 years. So if that's the case, how come it was only 22 years? The 14 years are not counted against him because he spent the time learning in yeshiva. Says the Gemara, in the end, it was 22 years. 20 years, Havyan. So if it was only 20 years away from them, then how come he's punished for 22 years? Okay? So just to be clear, Yaakov Avinu spends 14 years working together with Lavan for Yaakov and Rachel.
Yeah.
At that point, he says, Matai e'eseh ani. What am I going to do for my own house? I have to make money for myself. How many years extra is he there? He's there 6 years, but 6 years he's working not for Lavan. He's working now for himself. He's in a separate situation. Okay, so he works for 20 years by Lavan, 14 years with Lavan, 6 years by himself. Working for himself in Aram Naharaim before they leave. So it's 20 years, not 22. So how come he's punished for 22 years with Yosef? Because he delayed another 2 years on the way back home. There's another 2 years. The Tanya, Yaakov Avinu comes to Sukkot, to a city called Sukkot. Why is it called Sukkot? Because he builds Sukkot for his livestock. He does over there 18 months. שנאמר, יעקב נעשה סוכות, אביו אין לו בית במקרה, הוא עשה סוכות, ובית אל עשה 6 חודשים, והקריב זבחים. And when he gets to Bet El, he spends 6 months there, he's bringing korbanot, thanking Hashem, like he promised he would on the way out, right? So 18 months and 6 months gets you 24 months, so 20 years in Aram Naharaim with Lavan, 2 years on the road back, 18 months in Bet El, 18 months in Sukkot, and 6 months in Bet El. That gives us a grand total of 24 months, which is 2 years. So 20 years and 2 years is the years that he's not away, he's not with his father, and therefore he's punished for that, the fact that Yosef is not with him. The question we have to ask ourselves is, his father and mother sent him to Aram Naharaim.
Why should he be punished for following their...
And by the way,
They say come back at a certain time.
so what would you think? Okay, so the answer is, no, we sent you to get married. We didn't send you to spend 2 decades away from us. Problem is, why'd they send him there?
The problem is why they send them to get married.
No. Yes, to get married. In other words, what would be the solution? Why is he getting punished for 22 years? They sent him there. That is kibbud avayim. He was listening. So why is he punished for 22 years away from them when he listened to them?
And he spent too much time there.
The answer is that maybe they only sent him to go get married. You should have got married and come back. But that ignores the whole narrative. Why did they send him there? Because Esav wants to kill him. So long as Esav wants to kill him, then the reason for them sending him is still intact. So there's no point no reason for him to come back.
He doesn't know when that's up. When that might,
Well, we kind of do. Because what does Esav say that Rivka hears? Yikrivu yemei evel avi ve'ahargat Yaakov. Let the days of the mourning for my father commence. In other words, as soon as my father dies, that's when I'm going to kill him. So we have a standing order, right? There's a, what's it called? Wanted dead or alive poster for Yaakov in the tavern, in the saloon, okay? Ye oldie saloon, where Esav is saying, this is my intention. So all these years that he's away, first of all, it's pikuach nefesh. Second of all, it's kibbud avayim. How is this a lack of kibbud avayim?
But for the pikuach nefesh side, it doesn't end when he comes back after 22 years. Esav is still alive. So the risk is still there.
The risk is still there. But that doesn't mean, again, let's say I'm patur from mitzvah because pikuach nefesh. And at some point I say, you know what, forget it, I'm just going to do the mitzvah. That means that it undoes the pikuach nefesh part from before?
No, I mean, he could have come back, a couple of years before. Nothing changed.
Right, so in other words, instead of staying away for 22 years, he should have stayed away for longer.
He could have stayed less also.
No, but again, remember, the point why they sent him away is because they worried Esau was going to kill him.
Correct.
So now you're telling me he's being punished because he abandoned his parents on some level. But they sent him. They sent him.
Right, but Yaakov decided to come back under his own volition. Nothing changed.
Okay, but so all the 22 years, he still should not have come back. Now that he comes back of his own volition, we're going to punish him for the 22 years where he wasn't supposed to come back?
He could have come back earlier.
I get that he could have come back earlier. But should he have come back at all? No. So now that he's come back, now you're punishing him?
I don't get it.
You're right. You're just not finishing your sentence.
I mean, I finished it in my mind, so I don't know what you're thinking.
No, the point is that, right, because it doesn't answer the question. I didn't have to come back. So now that I came back, you're punishing me for the fact that I didn't have to come back? The answer is it revealed that the reason why he was staying away was not because of his own parents. That's the point. The minute he made the decision on his own volition, he's like, you know what, I'm coming back now. Everything's exactly the same. That means that all this time that you stayed away, why were you staying away?
It wasn't pikuach nefesh.
It was. But that wasn't the reason.
It was not kibbud avayim.
And the proof that wasn't the reason is because when the time came when I wanted to come back, I came back even though it was pikuach nefesh.
So what was the reason?
Sorry?
So what was the reason?
No, I'm saying the reason may have been all those years. But the minute that you come back, you know what it's like? It's like checking out of the hospital against medical advice. The minute you've done that, the insurance policy ends. Why? Because they told you to stay. So once Yaakov Avinu was coming back, and it wasn't the time, so that reveals that all this time, you weren't here because my parents said I have to stay. You know what the proof is? Because if that was the case, you'd still be there. It wasn't because of Pikuach Nefesh. You know how you know? Because if that was a reason, you'd still be there. So what only reason is there left? Whatever you were telling yourself until now, whatever heter you were relying on until now, the real answer is because you didn't want to come back. Yeah, that's the point. And the proof is because when you wanted to come back, even without these two reasons being solved, you came back.
But I thought he got dinged for the 2 years, not for the 22.
He got dinged for the 22 because Yosef is away from him for 22 years.
Right. But he did go under his parents' orders. So
he did go.
Credit for that,
No, but that's not the point. The point is, until you know what they say, innocent until proven guilty.
So you should have stayed forever.
Once you prove that you're coming back, not without solving kibbud avayim, without solving for pikuach nefesh, then you're proving that from the first minute, you know why I stayed here? Because I wanted to stay here.
Well, you can make the argument that
You know, wait, let me give you a mashal, and then you tell me what you're going to say, because I think this will answer it. Let's say you have a guy who does all the mitzvah in the Torah, and he gets to one mitzvah, he's like, I disagree with this mitzvah, I'm not doing it. So, what do we? What's the claim against this fellow? So most people think, okay, so he's going to be punished because he didn't do that mitzvah. The Sifrei Musar say, no, you're missing the main point here. That means that every single mitzvah that he did is not because God said, it's because you like it, it's because you agree. So you undid every mitzvah.
It's a rough one.
You hear that? But again, think of the logic. It's rough, but it's correct. You indicated that I'm not doing this because God said, I'm doing this because I agree. But if I don't agree, I don't do. You hear that? Now that doesn't mean that if you don't do one mitzvah, all the other mitzvah will get canceled out. It's only true if the person says, I'm not doing this mitzvah because I disagree. I had a fellow, the guy's an Orthodox rabbi. He puts out a message on Facebook back in the day. He says, when I go to this week's, I hate this week going to shul. Why? Because he says, because I read in the Torah and it says, that a man should not lie with another man. I don't like going to shul. It pains me to read the Torah as making statements like this. I said to him, if it pains you to go to shul because you don't agree with God's Torah, no problem. But if you feel like you have the right to disagree with God's Torah, you're not a rabbi in Orthodoxy.
Open Orthodoxy, maybe.
Maybe open Orthodoxy. But in Orthodoxy, you're not a rabbi in Orthodoxy. You don't get to have a feeling. You get to struggle with it. You get to ask yourself why. But if you feel like you could disagree with God's mitzvot, that's up to you. Then that means that all the other mitzvot are just things that you agree with. That's why you're doing all those other things. And the proof comes that when comes something you don't like, you're like, I'm out for this. I'm not going to shul. I don't like this. He's a rabbi. Anyway. Shem Yishmor. Fine. So here we are, and we understand Hadran Alach, Megillah, Nekret. We have returned. We have finished, and we will return to Megillah, Nekret. Let's continue the Mishnah. The Mishnah continues and says, okay, maybe we'll just do the Mishnah today, so that we've started the next perek. Okay, because it's already 10:05. Someone who reads the Megillah, lemafreya, backwards, lo yatsa. What does it mean, lemafreya? We'll see exactly what the Mishnah means by that. But let's say I read the last chapter, and then the second to last chapter, and then the third to last chapter. I read the Megillah backwards. Or I read it last sentence, second to last sentence, right? Or I read it out of order in any way. Lo yatsa. Kara'a al peh. Let's say he read the Megillah by heart. We already came across this only a couple, maybe last class, right? If he reads it without reading it in the Megillah, kara'a al peh, also lo yatsa. Kara'a targum b'chol lashon. He read it in targum, in Aramaic or in another language, but he didn't read it in Hebrew. Lo yatsa. Did not fulfill his obligation. But they read it for lilo azot, for those that are foreigners, bilaz, in another language that they understand. And we'll see exactly what that means, the halakha as well. V'halo'ez sheshama ashurit yatsa. And a foreigner who heard the Megillah read it ashurit. Ashurit we came across already when we talked about the shapes of the letters. Ashurit is the old school Torah style letters. So over here it's referring to, Ashurit is referring to the language, not just the letters. But it says if someone reads that way, yatsa, he's fulfilled his obligation. And the idea here is, even if he doesn't speak Hebrew, that's the point. It doesn't mean, like me and you, that we're living in America and we speak English. So, if we hear it in Hebrew, we yotze, of course, because we also understand Hebrew. The Hidush over here is that someone who doesn't understand Hebrew at all still is yotze the Megillah. And we'll see exactly why that's a Hidush, but it is a Hidush. Because remember, what was the point of the Megillah? Anyone remember? Why are we reading Megillah on Purim? For something called Pirsumei Nisa, to spread the knowledge of the miracle. You don't understand one word. You sat through all the chapters of Megillah. You understand one word. In what way is there Pirsumei Nisa? How do you spread the knowledge of the miracle? Yeah? And still, the Mishnah says, Yatsa. We'll see why. Kara'a sirugim umitnamnem Yatsa. What if the person read it, sirugim, not in order? We'll see again what sirugim exactly means. We read it with not in it's not sequential. We'll see exactly what that means. Umitnamnem, or let's say he's dozing off, right? Yatsa hayakotva. A person is writing the Megillah, dorsha umagiha. And as he's writing the Megillah, dorsha, he's saying it out loud, or he's expressing it as a learning, right? Or Megillah, or he's correcting the Megillah. But while he's doing this process of writing or correcting or giving a class in Megillah, he actually says every word of the Megillah. Im kiven libo yatsa. If his intention when he read the words of the Megillah was to fulfill his mitzvah of reading the Megillah, he fulfills it. Vim lav. But if the guy, let's say he's writing, but the only way he could write it is if he reads the word Vayehi, Bimeh, no intention of fulfilling the Megillah. I'm just writing it today. Happened to be a scribe. I'm writing a Megillah. Turns out there was no reading Megillah in my town. So now do I have to read it again? I didn't have intention. Halacha is if you didn't have intention, lo yatsa, do not fulfill your obligation. Hayta kituva b'sam u'b'sikra u'b'kumus u'b'kankantom. If you wrote it with different kinds of ink, we'll see what they are. Sam, sikra, kumus, or kankantum. Al haniyar ve'ala diftera. Or if it was written on two different types of paper. We'll see again exactly what these mean. Each one exactly what it means. So niyar or diftera, but it's not on regular parchment. Lo yatsa, you don't fulfill your obligation. Achte ktuva ashurit al hasefer ubidio. So we have three conditions. It needs to be written in ashurit. You can't write the Megillah in Hebrew script. It has to be written in the block Hebrew letters of ashurit. It needs to be written on parchment, on hasefer, and it needs to be written ubidio with black ink. And if it's not written, if it doesn't have all these three conditions, then the Megillah itself is not kosher. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen. We'll continue here, Be'ezrat Hashem, next week.